Watching Los Flintstones through the lens of the title El Rey del Pastel de Piedra Moras is like gazing into a mirror polished with nostalgia, irony, and the crumbs of a world that tried to turn the prehistoric into the suburban. It is a film that does not merely parody modern society, but reconstructs it out of stone, turning every domestic object into a geological joke and every gesture into a fossilized routine. In this strange landscape, the idea of a pie made of rock berries becomes a perfect metaphor. Sweetness extracted from hardness, pleasure sculpted from survival, and the absurdity of normal life served in edible form. When I revisit the movie, I find myself not in Bedrock, but in a time capsule where television's innocence and satire blend seamlessly, like layers of sediment compressing decades of laughter and longing. The Flintstones were always a reflection of mid-20th century America, filtered through the invention of a Stone Age sitcom, but in the film adaptation, this idea expands into a kind of technicolor allegory. El Rey del Pastel de Piedra Moras could easily describe Fred Flintstone himself, the self-crowned monarch of appetite, ambition, and blundering pride. The story follows him as he stumbles from quarry worker to accidental executive, a trajectory that might as well be carved on the tablets of human folly. What fascinates me most is how each scene constructs a visual parody of modern capitalism, dressed in animal skins and dinosaur bones, yet unmistakably about mortgages, promotions, and corporate greed. The first scene that lingers in my mind is the breakfast table, where Wilma sets down a plate of stone-shaped pancakes while Pebbles taps her spoon in rhythm. The scene looks comical on the surface, but the ritual is deeply human. Family order, gender roles, the morning rush. The rockberry pie appears for the first time here, a prized dessert reserved for Sunday, when Fred's temper relaxes and the family allows itself to pretend that their humble cave is a palace. The way the camera lingers on the pie reminds us that luxury, in Bedrock, is as artificial as the dream of upward mobility. The sweetness is temporary, often crushed by the weight of boulders and bills. The workplace scenes carry an equally deliberate symbolism. Fred operates a machine powered by a living creature, an exhausting metaphor for industrial exploitation that the movie plays for laughs but never truly hides. His friendship with Barney Rubble provides the emotional center of the story. Two men trapped in the same quarry of life, one slightly less reckless than the other, both yearning for recognition. When Fred is suddenly promoted after a dubious aptitude test, his cave fills with new furniture carved from marble, and Wilma's laughter becomes a cautious echo. In these moments, the film resembles a prehistoric version of Death of a Salesman, disguised as slapstick. The audience laughs when the stone television collapses under its own weight, but the laughter carries unease, as if Bedrock itself is warning us that progress without wisdom leads to rubble. El Rey del Pastel de Piedra Moras, as a title encapsulates this bittersweet triumph. Fred wins the contest for the biggest rockberry pie in the neighborhood fair, yet his victory is hollow, his crown made of crumbs. The pie competition becomes a metaphor for social aspiration. Everyone wants to bake the perfect image of happiness. Even if the ingredients are impossible to find, Wilma's hands, covered in flour and dust, mirror the invisible labor of all domestic life, while Fred's boastful grin mirrors the fragile pride of a man who defines himself by possessions. The movie invites us to laugh, but the laughter has edges. One of the most visually striking sequences takes place during the Bedrock Fair itself. The parade of dinosaur-drawn floats, the clumsy rock bands, the confetti of crushed shells, all choreographed with a childlike exuberance, conceals a quiet critique of consumerism. Fred stands before his giant rockberry pie, the camera circling him like a coronation, and for a brief second, we see the illusion of power. Then, of course, the pie collapses under its own weight, smearing him from head to toe. It is a gag, but also an epiphany. Kingship in this world is always temporary, melting under its own absurdity. Every time I watch that scene, I think of my grandfather, who used to work in a factory and come home with dust on his clothes and humor in his voice. He loved the Flintstones because, as he said, they made the Stone Age look easier than life in the 20th century. Perhaps that is why the film resonates beyond its jokes. Beneath the prehistoric facade lies a melancholy recognition that humanity never changes. We still chase promotions, measure worth by possessions, and bake symbolic pies to prove our value. The prehistoric aesthetic simply exposes the bones beneath the skin of modern life. The domestic tension between Fred and Wilma is another layer worth excavating. Wilma's patience hides a quiet intelligence that the film often underplays but never erases. In the scenes where she confronts Fred after his reckless spending spree, the lighting softens, the camera lingers, and for a moment, the cartoonish world feels painfully real. Her voice carries a mixture of affection and disappointment that transcends the genre. The rockberry pie reappears on the kitchen table, untouched, a symbol of everything that should taste sweet but doesn't. This is where the film transforms from comedy into fable. Barney and Betty Rubble, in contrast, represent stability without ambition. Their home is smaller, their clothes simpler, but their laughter more genuine. The dinner scene where both couples share the pie, passing slices on stone plates, remains one of my favorites. It is filmed with a warmth that almost disguises its critique. Happiness in Bedrock depends not on abundance, but on acceptance. When the children start giggling because a bird steals a piece of pie, the moment dissolves into laughter, reminding us that joy survives only in imperfection. From a cinematic perspective, the film's production design deserves admiration. Every prop seems alive: the living record player, the garbage-eating creature, the mammoth shower. These comic inventions serve as both spectacle and commentary. They remind us that technological progress is always double-edged. Each convenience demands another creature's labor. Yet the film's visual humor softens this truth, turning cynicism into charm. The rockberry pie, again, is the perfect emblem. It requires prehistoric berries crushed by hand, baked on a stone slab cooled by a pterodactyl's wings. It is ridiculous and endearing, a microcosm of Bedrock's entire philosophy. Hard work turned into celebration, absurdity baked into routine. If one interprets the title El Rey del Pastel de Piedra Moras symbolically, Fred becomes a tragicomic monarch, ruling over the fragile kingdom of his desires. His throne is the couch, his crown a chef's hat, his subjects the creatures who labor invisibly to power his world. The movie's humor depends on repetition. Fred's temper, his yabba-dabba-doo, his constant stumbles. But behind the repetition lies the anxiety of stagnation. The Bedrock setting, for all its playfulness, is static, eternal, unchanging. Civilization will never evolve. The wheel will always be reinvented. Perhaps that is the film's quietest tragedy. Its characters are fossils of their own dreams, forever trapped in the amber of reruns. Still, the narrative finds redemption in friendship. Barney's loyalty rescues Fred when his promotion turns out to be a scam orchestrated by corporate villains. The sequence where Fred flees through the quarry at sunset, chased by stone guards, might seem overblown, yet it carries mythic resonance. Dust clouds rise like memories. Fred's silhouette looks heroic for the first time. When he finally clears his name and returns home, his first act is not to reclaim power, but to share the remaining slice of rockberry pie. The gesture is simple, but within it lies the film's moral center. Generosity as the antidote to greed. Humility as the true crown. I often imagine what Bedrock would look like if time moved forward. Would Fred become obsolete, replaced by smarter cavemen with digital slates instead of chisels? Would the rockberry pie become a nostalgic relic, like a vinyl record or a family recipe? The answer perhaps is irrelevant. The film's timelessness lies in its circularity. By freezing civilization at its earliest stage, it holds up a mirror to our latest one. The jokes about Stone Age technology no longer feel distant. They echo our own obsession with gadgets, comfort, and appearance. Fred's clumsy attempts to improve his life mirror every generation's struggle to balance desire and contentment. There is a tender irony in the way the film concludes. After all the chaos, the family gathers around the table again. The pie, now half burned, sits between them. Pebbles and Bam Bam giggle as Fred pretends to crown himself king with a pie tin. The camera pans out, revealing Bedrock bathed in amber light, dinosaurs yawning in the background. It is a closing image that feels both silly and sacred. A portrait of flawed humanity finding solace in routine. The laughter that ends the film is not the laughter of satire but of acceptance. Personally, every time I watch that ending, I think about how childhood cartoons often promised stability through repetition. No matter how disastrous Fred's day became, he always came home. The house remained intact, Wilma forgiving, the family circle unbroken. In a world where change feels relentless, Bedrock's stillness offers comfort. The rockberry pie, however absurd, becomes a ritual of resilience. It reminds me of my own family dinners, where humor was the only thing that softened hardship. The film captures that same emotional geology, layers of joy and exhaustion, love and frustration, all compressed into the simple act of sharing food. El Rey del Pastel de Piedramoras might sound like a whimsical title, but it crystallizes the essence of Os Flintstones. The absurdity of craving a crown in a world made of stone. The pie symbolizes every human attempt to find sweetness amid survival, every illusion of grandeur that crumbles under laughter. Fred's crown of crumbs, Wilma's quiet dignity, Barney's loyal heart, all combine into a tableau that transcends parody. Beneath the prehistoric jokes lies a universal truth. Happiness is not built from invention or promotion, but from the willingness to share one's portion, however small, with others. Rewatching the film today, I realize how its humor hides a surprising tenderness. Bedrock citizens are not fools but dreamers who keep rebuilding their lives out of rubble. The movie invites us to join their feast, to taste the impossible rockberry pie, and laugh at our own cravings. In that laughter, we become part of their world, not as spectators but as fellow fossils of human desire. And so, when Fred raises his slice and declares himself the king of pies, we laugh not at him, but with him. Because we too have crowned ourselves with crumbs at some point, believing for a moment that the sweetness would last forever. That is the secret heart of Os Flintstones, and of the title El Rey del Pastel de Piedramoras. The eternal comedy of being human, baking hope out of a stone, and finding joy before it crumbles.